Edgar Cayce's final vision, What's Coming By, end of 2025 daily prayer. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Sun Tzu. Here we are, approaching the edge of something we can all feel, even if we can't fully explain it. As 2025 draws closer to its end, there's a question quietly stirring in the hearts of many. What did Edgar Cayce really see? What was the final vision of the man they called the sleeping prophet? And more importantly, what does it mean for us today? The answer, I believe, isn't something we should be bracing for in the future. It's not some cataclysmic event waiting on the horizon. The answer is found by simply looking around us, right here, right now. Cayce's final vision may not be a single event waiting to happen at all. It might be a process that we are already living through. It is the breaking of the old certainties we once held so dear. It's the shaking of our foundations, and I don't just mean the earth beneath our feet. I mean the foundations of our society, of our long-held beliefs, and maybe even our very own sense of who we are. You can feel it, can't you? It's in the tension that seems to permeate everything. The deep divides in our politics that have made conversations with friends and family feel like walking through a minefield. It's in the quiet worry about the economy, the instability that seems to hum just beneath the surface. We see it in the weather, which feels more unpredictable and more intense than ever before. It's a general sense of unease, a feeling that the ground beneath us is no longer as solid as it once was. And that is why we are here today. This is not a story about fear. I have no interest in adding to the anxiety of our times. This is a story about meaning. It is a heartfelt invitation to look at the chaos, at all this shaking and breaking, not as a sign of an ending, but as the unmistakable sign of a profound and perhaps even necessary awakening. The man behind the visions. Who was Edgar Cayce? So, before we go any deeper into this idea of a global awakening, it's worth taking a step back to ask, who was the man behind these visions? To truly understand the message, we have to understand the messenger. And Edgar Cayce was not at all what you might expect. He wasn't a guru on a mountaintop or a charismatic preacher. He was born in 1877 on a simple farm in Kentucky, a humble man with barely an 8th grade education. From a young age, strange things seemed to happen around him, but for most of his early life, he tried to live a normal existence as a bookseller and later a photographer. He was a devout Christian, a husband and a father. He was, in almost every way, an ordinary man, except for one extraordinary gift. He discovered, quite by accident, that he had the ability to put himself into a unique state of self-induced sleep. He would simply lie down on a couch, close his eyes, and enter a state that looked like a deep trance. Once he was in this state, you could ask him anything, literally anything, and a voice, a clear, steady voice that sounded different from his own waking one, would answer with incredible detail and wisdom. And here's the part that's truly astounding. When he woke up, he wouldn't remember a single word of what was said. He had to have a stenographer in the room, dutifully writing down everything, just so he could later read what this other consciousness had spoken through him. He never called himself a prophet. In fact, for a long time, he was deeply troubled by this ability, unsure if it was a blessing or something to be feared. What convinced him to continue was seeing the undeniable good it could do. The vast majority of his work had nothing to do with global predictions. Over the course of his life, he gave over 14,000 of these documented readings, and most of them were for ordinary people who were sick, who had lost hope, who came to him as a last resort. The readings would diagnose their illnesses with stunning accuracy and prescribe holistic treatments, things involving diet, massage, and prayer that often resulted in remarkable healings. He came to see his ability not as a tool for fortune-telling, but as a gift to be used in service to others. That was his purpose. His entire life was oriented around helping the person in front of him. Now, it's important to understand that these dramatic predictions we're discussing, the ones about earth changes, shifting poles, and nations in peril, made up only a tiny fraction of his life's work. They usually came up when people asked broader questions about the future of humanity, but they get the most attention, of course, because they're dramatic. They capture our imagination. But to focus only on them is to miss the heart of who Edgar Cayce was. He was, first and foremost, a healer, dedicated to bringing comfort, health, and spiritual insight to individuals, one person at a time. And it's through that lens, the lens of a compassionate healer, that we should approach his visions for the world. Reinterpreting Metaphorical Prophecies for 2025. So, with that understanding of the man as a healer, let's now turn to those dramatic visions that have captured so much attention. These are the prophecies that can be unsettling to hear, the ones that speak of great upheaval. For decades, people have looked at them literally as geological predictions of a terrifying future. But what if that's only the surface layer? What if, in the spirit of Cayce's deeper work, these visions are not just literal predictions, but profound metaphors? What if they are symbolic mirrors, reflecting the immense inner changes and societal stresses of our time? Let's explore that together, looking at his most famous prophecies through the lens of our world in 2025. Prophecy number 1. The Breaking of America, a Nation Divided. One of his most startling prophecies for his own country was the statement that the western portion of America will be broken up, and that land would appear in the Atlantic and Pacific. He also spoke of the Mississippi River basin being dramatically altered, essentially changing the very map of the nation. For years, people have interpreted this through the lens of geology, imagining catastrophic earthquakes along the San Andreas Fault. But what if this breaking is something we are all experiencing right now, in a way that is far more personal and immediate than any earthquake? Could this breaking be the profound political and cultural chasm that now runs through the heart of the nation? Think about it. We are living through a divide more real and impactful to our daily lives than any geological fault line. The Mississippi River once divided the country geographically, but today we see lines of division drawn on social media feeds, at family dinner tables, and in the halls of government. Friendships have been strained, family ties tested, all by a growing sense of being on opposite sides of an unbridgeable canyon. This isn't a physical breaking of land, but it is a breaking of trust. It's a fracturing of a shared American identity. We no longer seem to agree on what is true, what is right, or what our country even stands for. The very foundations of our civil discourse have been shaken. When Cayce spoke of a great divide running through the center of the country, is it possible he was seeing not a river overflowing its banks, but a society overflowing with anger and mistrust, splitting itself down the middle? This is a breaking of unity, a deep and painful tearing of the national fabric that every single one of us can feel. When viewed this way, the prophecy is no longer about a potential future event. It becomes a stunningly accurate description of our present-day reality. Prophecy number 2. Japan must go into the sea. The overwhelming tide of change. Perhaps none of Cayce's prophecies is more blunt or terrifying on the surface than his statement that the greater portion of Japan must go into the sea. It's an image of total devastation, an idea so catastrophic it's hard to truly comprehend, and given Japan's location on the Ring of Fire, it has always been interpreted as a warning of an unimaginable tsunami or earthquake. But again, let's pause and approach this from that symbolic perspective we discussed. What if the sea represents something other than water? Beyond a literal interpretation, Consider this as a metaphor for the immense pressures facing established traditional societies in a rapidly changing world. The sea could symbolize the overwhelming tide of globalization, technological disruption, and demographic shifts that threaten to submerge old ways of life. Japan, a nation with a rich and deeply respected ancient culture, is on the front lines of this very struggle. It faces an aging population, immense economic pressures, and the constant pull of a modern, westernized global culture that can feel like a force of nature in itself. In this light, going into the sea is not about a physical event, but a cultural one. It speaks to a universal struggle, the fear of losing cultural identity in the face of unstoppable change. It's the anxiety that cherished traditions, languages, and philosophies could be washed away by a homogeneous global monoculture. This isn't just a Japanese story. All of us, in our own ways, feel this pressure. We see local businesses disappear, replaced by global chains. We see the pace of technology making old skills obsolete. We feel the foundations of our own cultural identities shifting. Cayce's vision for Japan, then, becomes a powerful allegory for the entire world's struggle to honor its past while navigating the relentless, overwhelming sea of the future. Prophecy number 3. Europe changed in the twinkling of an eye. A sudden shift in order. Finally, there is his enigmatic statement about Europe. The upper portion of Europe, he said, will be changed in the twinkling of an eye. The language here is what's so powerful. The twinkling of an eye suggests something incredibly fast, sudden, and irreversible. For decades, people imagined a sudden geological catastrophe, like a pole shift or massive flooding. But haven't we, just in the last several years, witnessed changes in Europe that have occurred with a speed that could be described as exactly that? Think about the established order that most of us grew up with. For over 70 years, a certain set of rules and alliances defined the world. We took them for granted. And yet, we have witnessed changes that once seemed unthinkable unfold with breathtaking speed. Geopolitical alliances have shifted dramatically, sometimes seemingly overnight. Energy crises have emerged that have rewritten economic maps in a matter of months. Social structures have been strained to their limits by political upheaval and large-scale migration, challenging the very idea of a unified continent. The twinkling of an eye may not be a sudden flood, but the shockingly rapid collapse of the post-war order we once believed was permanent. It's the sudden psychological realization that the world we knew is gone, replaced by a new, far more uncertain reality. It is a continent, and by extension the entire Western world, being forced to redefine itself, its values, and its place in the world, not over the course of generations, but in the span of just a few short years. That is a change that happens in the twinkling of an eye. Once again, what seemed like a far-fetched prediction of a future disaster looks more like a deeply insightful commentary on the world we are living in right now. The great spiritual transformation, the real final vision. So, when we allow ourselves to step back from the literal, frightening interpretations of these prophecies, and instead view them as powerful, symbolic mirrors of our inner world, something truly incredible begins to happen. The experience is like adjusting the focus on a lens. What was once a blurry and chaotic collection of anxieties starts to resolve into a single, clear, and profoundly meaningful picture. And it is within that picture that we find what I believe is the true final vision of Edgar Cayce. This wasn't a one-time pronouncement. It was a theme woven through the very fabric of his life's work, a recurring truth that surfaced in thousands of different readings. And it is, without question, the most important part of our conversation today. He often repeated that the changes in the earth mirrored the changes in human consciousness. Let's just sit with that for a moment, because it's the key that unlocks everything. The changes in the earth mirrored the changes in human consciousness. In other words, the chaos we see outside the political turmoil, the social fractures, the environmental crises, is not a random series of unfortunate events. It is a direct reflection of the chaos brewing within us collectively. The anger, the fear, and the deep, painful division that characterize our public life are the external projections of our own internal states. When we are at war with ourselves and with our neighbors, the world we create is a world at war. Think of it this way. The environmental disregard we see, the pollution of our oceans and the destruction of our forests, is a heartbreakingly accurate projection of our own inner sense of disconnection. A disconnection from the natural world, yes, but also a disconnection from ourselves, from the sacredness of life that flows through all things, including us. When we treat the earth like a resource to be exploited, it is because we have first come to see ourselves as separate from it. The pervasive economic anxiety, the constant pressure and fear of not having enough, is a mirror of our deep-seated collective consciousness of scarcity. It reflects a spiritual poverty, a belief that we are alone and must compete to survive, rather than a belief in a supportive, abundant universe where we can cooperate to thrive. When we look at it through this lens, the world is no longer something that is just happening to us. We are not simply victims of circumstance. In a very real metaphysical sense, the world is flowing from us. This is not a new or radical idea. It's a timeless spiritual principle, a thread that runs through nearly every great wisdom tradition on earth. It is the law of cause and effect, the principle of as within, so without. It is the powerful idea that our shared consciousness, the sum total of all our thoughts, beliefs, fears, and hopes, is the invisible architecture that helps create our shared reality. And if that is true, then everything changes. The vision is no longer about predicting earthquakes and floods. It becomes a vision of a great crossroads for humanity. This is the real drama. This is the ultimate choice that stands before every single one of us. Will we, as a species, continue down the familiar path of fear, greed, selfishness, and separation, the very energies that, according to Cayce, manifest externally as disasters? Or will we use the immense pressure of these times, the undeniable shaking of all our old foundations, to finally awaken to the absolute necessity of a different way? To awaken to the urgent need for cooperation, compassion, unity, and a reverence for life. That is the final vision. It is a choice, presented to us not as a punishment from an angry God, but as a natural consequence, an evolutionary opportunity. It is a final exam for humanity, if you will. And if you look closely, with an open heart, you can see people making that choice everywhere. This spiritual awakening isn't just a mystical, abstract idea. It is happening right now. It's happening in the quiet but explosive growth of practices like mindfulness and meditation, as millions seek to calm their inner chaos. It's happening in the great resignation and the ongoing re-evaluation of work, as people courageously leave behind unfulfilling careers to search for a life of purpose and meaning. It's in the growing, undeniable awareness of our interconnectedness, the scientific and spiritual understanding that what we do in our own corner of the world profoundly affects everyone, everywhere. This is why this message, which on the surface seems so dark, is ultimately one of profound and unshakable hope. What Cayce foresaw was not a curse laid upon us, but a challenge issued to us. It is a test, not a sentence. A test is something you can prepare for, something you can pass. A sentence is something you passively accept, and we are not meant to be passive observers of our fate. We are, and have always been, active participants in its creation. Every single one of us. The great spiritual transformation isn't a future event we need to wait for with anxiety. It is a present moment choice. It is a choice we make with the thoughts we choose to entertain, with the words we choose to speak, with the actions we choose to take every single day. The final vision isn't something to be watched from the sidelines. It is something to be lived right here and now. So, as we navigate the remainder of 2025 and beyond, perhaps Edgar Cayce's vision invites us to ask a different kind of question. Instead of anxiously asking, "What is going to happen to us?" we might begin to ask ourselves, with sincerity and courage, who are we choosing to be amidst it all? The real power, his work suggests, was never truly in predicting the future, but in choosing how we meet the present moment. The future, after all, is born from the choices we make right here, right now. We've explored these deep and sometimes unsettling ideas together, and I truly want to know your thoughts. This isn't a one-way lecture, it's a conversation. In the comments below, I'd be so grateful if you would share which part of Cayce's vision, when we reinterpreted it through the lens of our modern world, resonated most with you. What specific shaking or breaking do you observe most clearly in our society, or perhaps even in your own life? Your reflections are such a valuable part of this shared journey, and they help all of us feel a little less alone in what we're experiencing. Now, after looking at this turbulent world with such honesty, it's completely natural to seek an anchor. It's a very human response to look for a practice that can ground us and bring a lasting peace to our inner world, regardless of the storms that may be raging outside. And that is exactly where we are headed next. In the next section, we will move from this contemplative state to a practical state. We will explore a simple yet incredibly profound tool for building that inner sanctuary we've been talking about, the practice of a daily prayer for strength and serenity. It's a way to take all these powerful insights from Cayce's vision and turn them into a tangible source of personal power, a quiet refuge that you can return to day after day. It's the next logical step, learning how to tend to our own inner world so that we can meet the outer world with grace. Daily prayer, building inner refuge amidst the storm. Welcome back. In our last conversation, we journeyed together through the unsettling yet profound visions of Edgar Cayce, reinterpreting them not as prophecies of doom, but as honest reflections of our turbulent times. And to be honest, acknowledging that reality, looking at it squarely, can be overwhelming. It can leave us feeling a bit adrift in a sea of uncertainty, with a very real and pressing question echoing in our hearts. What can I do? How can I possibly find peace when the world feels anything but peaceful? This brings us to the second, and equally important, part of our title, Daily Prayer. And I want to suggest that prayer, in its purest and most practical form, is not about asking for the world to change to our liking. It is the act of changing ourselves so that we can meet the world with grace, with strength, and with clarity. It is the conscious, deliberate act of building an inner sanctuary, a quiet, steady place of unshakable peace that no external storm can ever truly breach. This is an idea that wise people have understood for centuries, from the ancient Stoic philosophers to modern psychologists. They all recognized a fundamental truth. While we have very little control over the events happening around us, we have absolute power over our inner response. This is our true locus of control. So, whether you connect with a specific faith or a more universal sense of spirituality, or even if you're just looking for a practical tool for mental and emotional well-being, let's explore prayer as a universal human practice. Think of it as a quiet, intentional dialogue with the deepest part of ourselves, and perhaps with the creative force of the universe itself. It's the first step from simply seeing the problem to actively becoming part of the solution, starting from within. The foundations of prayer. Why does it work? It's one thing to talk about prayer as a nice idea, but it's another thing to understand why it actually works. How can such a simple, quiet act have such a profound impact on our lives, especially when the world feels so loud and demanding? The reasons are both practical and profound, grounded in how our minds work and in the deepest needs of the human heart. Let's explore three of the main pillars that give this practice its power. First, and perhaps most importantly, prayer is a powerful tool for shifting focus. Think about your average day. From the moment you wake up, your attention is under constant assault. The news alerts on your phone, the endless scroll of social media, the demands of work, the worries about family, the anxieties about the future. It's a relentless bombardment. Our modern world is an expert at capturing our attention and pointing it towards what is wrong, what is broken, and what we should be afraid of. And our brains, wired for survival, naturally latch onto these threats. A daily prayer acts as a conscious interruption of this cycle. It is a deliberate and intentional redirection of our most valuable resource, our attention. For just a few minutes, we consciously decide to stop dwelling on what is wrong and instead to intentionally focus on what is eternal, what is good, what is true. We turn our gaze from the chaos of the world to the stillness within. This isn't just wishful thinking, it's a form of mental training. Neuroscientists have shown that practices like focused prayer and meditation have a real, measurable effect on our physiology. When we enter a state of quiet contemplation, we activate our parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and digest system. Our heart rate slows, our breathing deepens, and the production of the stress hormone cortisol decreases. We are giving our bodies and minds a desperately needed break from the constant state of fight or flight. Over time, this simple act rewires our brain, literally strengthening the neural pathways associated with peace, calm, and rational decision-making, while weakening the pathways of habitual anxiety. We are, in a very real sense, creating new habits of peace in the very structure of our minds. The second pillar is that prayer creates a powerful sense of connection. Loneliness and a feeling of isolation have become quiet epidemics in our time. It's a strange paradox. We've never been more technologically connected, yet many of us have never felt more alone. We can feel adrift, like we're facing all of life's challenges by ourselves. This sense of separation is a source of deep human suffering. Prayer is a direct antidote to this. In that quiet moment, we are consciously reminding ourselves that we are not alone. It's an act of reaching out beyond our own limited ego. For some, this connection is with God, a loving, divine presence. For others, it might be a connection to the universe, to the vast, intelligent web of life that we are all a part of. And for others still, it can be a connection to the collective human spirit, to the shared hopes and struggles of all of humanity. The specific name we give it doesn't matter as much as the feeling it evokes. It's the feeling of being part of something larger than ourselves. This sense of connection is a fundamental human need, as essential as food and water. It is the bedrock of resilience. When we truly feel that we are not alone, that we are held and supported by a wisdom and love greater than our own, our burdens feel lighter. Our fear subsides, replaced by a quiet confidence. Prayer is the act of remembering this profound and comforting truth. Finally, the third pillar is that prayer teaches us the art of acceptance and release. Much of our daily anxiety comes from a single, exhausting struggle, our desperate need to control everything. We want to control outcomes, control other people's opinions, control the future. We believe that if we just worry enough, plan enough, and strive enough, we can force life to go according to our script. And of course, life constantly reminds us that we can't. This struggle is the source of immense frustration and stress. A core element of powerful prayer is the act of surrender. Now, this is a very misunderstood word. Surrender, in this context, does not mean giving up or becoming passive. It is an active and courageous act of releasing our white-knuckled grip on the things we cannot control. It is the wisdom to acknowledge our own limitations. In prayer, we can say, "I've done all I can. I've thought this through. I've taken the right actions. Now, I release the outcome. I place my trust in a wisdom greater than my own." This act of letting go is profoundly liberating. It frees up an enormous amount of mental and emotional energy that was being wasted on worry. It allows us to find peace even when things are uncertain, to be okay with not having all the answers. It is the ultimate act of trust, a declaration that even when we can't see the whole path, we believe we are being guided. So, when we combine these three elements, the intentional shifting of our focus, the deep sense of connection, and the liberating act of surrender, we begin to understand that prayer is not a passive plea. It is one of the most active and transformative things we can do to cultivate a resilient and peaceful heart in the midst of a challenging world. Practicing daily prayer, a step-by-step guide. And now, having understood the why, let us move into the how. This is an invitation to move from theory into practice. I'm going to share a simple, universal prayer with you. It's structured in 5 parts, and after I say each part, I'll pause and explain the intention behind it, so that this becomes more than just a recitation of words. It becomes a deeply felt experience. So, wherever you are, I invite you now to find a comfortable position, perhaps sitting upright in a chair with your feet flat on the floor. And if you feel called to, gently close your eyes. Let us begin by simply breathing. There's nothing you need to do or figure out right now. Just bring your awareness to your breath. Inhale deeply, feeling your lungs expand, and exhale completely, letting everything go. One more time, a slow, deep breath in, and a long, slow breath out. Let go of the noise of the day, the lists, the worries, the conversations, and let us enter this sacred space together. Part 1. Centering, finding our stillness. Let us begin with these words, either silently in your heart or spoken softly aloud. In this moment of stillness, I quiet my mind and open my heart. I step away from the world of doing and I enter the world of being. I am here. I am present. This first step is simply about arriving. It's about creating a sanctuary, not in a physical place, but in time and in space, right here within yourself. It is a gentle but firm acknowledgement that our peace begins with the simple, courageous act of showing up for ourselves, of giving ourselves these few precious moments of undivided attention. We are grounding ourselves in the present moment, the only place where true peace can ever be found. Part 2. Surrendering, releasing our burdens. And now, continuing in this quiet space, let us release what weighs us down. I release my fears about the future, and I release my regrets about the past. I surrender my need to control outcomes and my need to understand every why. I lay down the burdens of worry and anxiety, and I trust in the unfolding of a plan far greater than my own. This is the profound act of letting go. Imagine, if you will, each worry, each fear, each heavy thought as a stone that you have been carrying. And now, one by one, you are gently placing these stones on the bank of a flowing river and watching as the current carries them away. We are not denying that our concerns are real. We are simply choosing not to be imprisoned by them. We are acknowledging that we are not meant to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, and we are trusting that there is a wisdom at work in the universe that is beyond our limited understanding. This is the source of true inner freedom. Part 3. Invoking, nurturing our inner qualities. From this space of release, we can now ask for what we truly need. I ask for strength for this day, Not the strength to dominate, but the strength to endure with grace. I ask for clarity, not the clarity to see the entire path, but the clarity to take the next right step. I ask for courage, not the absence of fear, but the will to act with love in the face of fear. And I ask for a compassionate heart, that I may see myself and see all others through eyes of understanding, not judgment. Notice the shift here. We are not asking for external things to change. We are not praying for the world to become easier. We are asking for the internal resources to meet the world exactly as it island. We are asking to cultivate the qualities within ourselves that will allow us to navigate any challenge with wisdom and love. This is where our true, unshakable power lies. It's the prayer to become the person we are meant to be. Part 4. Gratitude, acknowledging our blessings. And now, let us fill the space we have created with the most powerful and healing of all emotions, gratitude. For the simple gift of this breath, I am grateful. For the quiet beauties of the world, the sky, a tree, a kind word, I am grateful. For the challenges that help me grow and for the love that sustains me, I am deeply grateful. Gratitude is the quickest path back to peace. It is an instant perspective shift. In a single moment, it moves our attention from what we think is lacking in our lives to the abundance that is already here. It reminds us that even on the most difficult days, there are blessings to be found, however small. Gratitude does not deny our pain, but it refuses to allow pain to be the whole story. It is the very foundation of a resilient and joyful spirit. Part 5. Closing. Carrying the light into the world. Finally, as we prepare to return to our day, we set our intention to share the peace we have found. May I carry this peace within me throughout the day. May my words be kind, my thoughts be constructive, and my actions be a source of light for others. May I be a vessel of peace in a world that so deeply needs it. Amen. This final part concludes the prayer by turning our inner peace into an outward offering. The ultimate goal of this practice is not just to feel good, but to be a source of good in the world. We take the calm, the clarity, and the compassion we have cultivated in this sacred, quiet space, and we make a conscious choice to carry it with us, allowing it to inform how we live, how we speak, and how we interact with every person we meet. It is the bridge from our inner sanctuary back into the world. And now, when you are ready, you can slowly and gently bring your awareness back to the room and open your eyes. Thank you for taking that time. I hope you feel a measure of the peace that this practice can offer. It's important to remember that this prayer is not a magic spell. It is a daily practice, much like exercising a muscle or tending to a garden. Some days, it will feel profound and deeply moving, and other days, if we're being honest, it might feel like you're just going through the motions, and that's okay. That's part of the process. But please know that every single time you show up for yourself in this way, you are casting a vote for peace. You are strengthening your inner sanctuary brick by brick. You are choosing to water the seeds of calm and resilience within you. I genuinely encourage you to try this practice or your own version of it for just 1 week. Make a small, gentle commitment to yourself to carve out just 5 minutes each morning, and then simply observe any changes in your sense of well-being. After you've had some time with it, please come back and share your experience in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Did any particular part of the prayer resonate with you? How does the simple act of daily reflection begin to change your perspective on the day's challenges? Your stories and insights are so important because they create a community of support and encouragement for us all. They remind each of us that we are not on this path alone. So now, a crucial question arises. Now that we have taken the time to cultivate this inner state of peace and strength, How do we maintain it when we step back into the inevitable chaos of the modern world? How do we apply these timeless virtues we've invoked, compassion, courage, clarity, to the very real and practical challenges of our jobs, our families, and our society? That is the final and most important step. In our final session together, we will explore the practical application of this inner work. We will bridge the gap between our sanctuary and the street, transforming our prayer into meaningful action and discovering the profound lessons this unique era has to teach us about what it truly means to be human. Living lessons, applying ancient wisdom to the modern world. Welcome to the final part of our journey together. In our last session, we created a sacred space, building an inner sanctuary through the quiet practice of daily prayer. And in that stillness, we found a source of strength, a glimmer of clarity, and a feeling of peace. But then, we open our eyes, we stand up, and we step back into the world. What happens then? What happens when the calm we cultivated in our 5 minutes of meditation is immediately tested by a blaring, angry news headline on the television? What happens when that feeling of compassion is challenged by a difficult conversation with a family member who sees the world completely differently? What happens to our inner peace when it meets the relentless demands of daily life, the deadlines, the traffic, the feeling that the world's problems are just too big? This is the final and perhaps most important piece of our journey. How do we bridge that gap between our inner peace and our outer reality? This is where spirituality gets real. The true purpose of Edgar Cayce's vision, as we've come to understand it, was never to frighten us into hiding away from the world. It was to awaken us to a new way of living in the world. And so, this final chapter is dedicated to exploring the practical, real-world lessons for that new way of life. It's about transforming our prayer into our practice. To do that, we'll explore 4 fundamental lessons that our modern world, in all its chaos and intensity, seems to be teaching us. These are lessons that echo the deepest wisdom of Cayce's readings, the incredible power of conscious choice, the absolute necessity of authentic connection, and the quiet, steady courage of living a life with purpose. Lesson 1: The power of choice, building an inner shelter. The first and most fundamental lesson is about the power of conscious choice. In a world that feels increasingly chaotic and out of control, it's easy to feel like a victim of circumstance, tossed about by the latest news or crisis. But the great spiritual traditions and modern psychology agree on this one profound truth. The one thing we always have control over is our own inner state. And we control that state by making conscious choices day in and day out. This is how we build that inner sanctuary we've been talking about. It isn't a physical place you can retreat to. It's a state of mind that you actively cultivate. It's a fortress of inner peace built brick by brick with your daily choices. Let's talk about 3 of the most important choices we can make. The first choice is about what we allow into our minds. We live in an age where we are literally drowning in information, but often starving for wisdom. It's crucial to understand that the 24/7 news cycle and the algorithms that drive our social media feeds are not designed for our peace of mind. They are designed for one thing: to capture and hold our attention. And the easiest way to do that is by triggering our most primal emotions, fear and outrage. This system is designed to keep us addicted and anxious, constantly scrolling, constantly waiting for the next threat to emerge. To consciously choose peace, we have to become the gatekeeper of our own minds. Building your inner sanctuary begins right here. This doesn't mean becoming uninformed or burying your head in the sand. It means becoming intentional. It means switching from being a passive consumer of information to an active, discerning one. So here is a practical step. Choose a specific, limited time each day to get updated on the world. maybe it's 15 minutes in the morning or half an hour in the evening, and choose your sources wisely. Find one or two balanced, reputable sources and get the information you need. And then, and this is the most important part, give yourself permission to unplug. For the rest of the day, protect your mental space. You do not need to be plugged into the fire hose of global anxiety every hour of every day. Your inner peace, your emotional stability, and your ability to be a positive force in your own life are far more valuable than knowing every breaking story the second it happens. This single choice can radically transform your daily experience of life. The second crucial choice is about how we respond to the world. Our modern world encourages and rewards instant reaction. An aggravating email lands in your inbox. A political comment from a relative triggers you. A news story makes your blood boil, and the impulse is to react immediately. We fire off a reply. We jump into the argument. We feed the outrage. And when we do that, we are almost always responding from the most primitive, reactive part of our brain, a place of anger and fear. To consciously choose peace, we must reclaim the space between a trigger and our response. The most powerful and practical spiritual practice you can adopt in the modern world is what I call the sacred pause. It's incredibly simple, but it will change everything. When you feel that surge of emotion, that anger, that anxiety, that righteousness, just stop. Before you speak, before you type, before you act, simply stop. Take one single, conscious breath. Inhale and exhale. In that brief, 2-second space you create, something miraculous happens. You reclaim your power. You shift from being a reactor, completely controlled by external events and other people's agendas, to becoming a responder, guided by your own inner wisdom. That pause allows the more evolved, rational part of your brain to come back online. In that space, you can ask yourself a simple question: what is the most compassionate and constructive response right now? Sometimes the answer will be to speak your truth, but to do so calmly and with respect. And many times you will find that the most powerful and peaceful response is to not respond at all. To simply let it go. This is not weakness. It is the highest form of inner strength. The third choice is about what we choose to see in the world. Our brains, for very good evolutionary reasons, are wired with what psychologists call a negativity bias. This means we are naturally programmed to scan our environment for threats, problems, and dangers. For our ancient ancestors living on the savannah, this was an essential survival mechanism. It kept them alive. But today, in a world where the threats are often abstract and amplified by the media, this same wiring can become a source of chronic unhappiness and anxiety. If we are not careful, we can end up seeing only what is wrong with the world, and we miss the incredible amount of good that is also present. To consciously choose peace, we must intentionally counterbalance this bias. We must actively look for the good. This is the practice from our daily prayer brought to life, integrated into our day. At the end of each day, perhaps before you go to sleep, make it a practice to consciously name 3 specific things that you are grateful for. It doesn't have to be anything monumental. I'm grateful for the warm cup of coffee this morning. I'm grateful for the 5-minute phone call with my daughter. I'm grateful for the way the sunlight came through the window this afternoon. It may sound simple, but this practice is transformative. It doesn't ignore the world's problems, and it doesn't pretend that difficulties don't exist. What it does is it balances the scales. It trains your mind to start noticing the countless small moments of grace, beauty, and kindness that are always present, but that we so often overlook in our rush and worry. Over time, this practice nurtures your resilience, lifts your spirit, and reminds you that even in challenging times, life is still a profound gift. It is the act of choosing to see through the lens of gratitude. Lesson 2. Healing is more important than prevention. So, we've talked about building our inner sanctuary through conscious choice. This is essential work. But that sanctuary is not meant to be a fortress where we hide from the world. It's meant to be a home base, a place of strength from which we can venture out and engage with the world in a new, more healing way. This brings us to the second fundamental lesson, a message that was at the very heart of Edgar Cayce's work: the absolute necessity of connection. When we feel anxious and the world seems unstable, our most basic, primal instinct is to prepare for the worst. We think about stocking up on supplies, protecting our finances, and pulling up the drawbridge to keep ourselves safe. But this is a paradox. The spiritual truth, the deeper lesson of our time, is that true safety is not found in preparing for separation. It is found in practicing connection. Mending the tears in our human fabric is infinitely more important than preparing for its collapse. The call of this era is to be a bridge builder in a world that is obsessed with building walls. And this, too, comes down to a series of conscious, practical choices we can make every day. Let's start with the most fundamental act of connection: how we talk to one another. We live in a world of broadcast. It feels like everyone has a megaphone on social media, on the news, even across the dinner table. Everyone is shouting their opinion, their truth, their fears, but very few of us are truly listening. And this, I believe, is the very root of the breaking of our society we spoke of earlier. We are suffering from a profound inability to hear one another. The most healing and revolutionary act you can offer in this loud and fractured world is the simple gift of your full attention. I invite you to try this. The next time you find yourself in a conversation, especially with someone you know you disagree with, make a quiet internal commitment to set aside your own agenda. Let go of the need to be right, the need to win the argument, the need to correct them. For just a few minutes, don't listen to rebut. Listen to understand. When we listen to rebut, we're not really listening at all. We're just waiting for the other person to take a breath so we can jump in with our own counter-argument, our own facts, our own speech. But when we listen to understand, everything changes. We get curious. We ask genuine questions, not gotcha questions. Questions like, "Tell me more about that," or "What was that experience like for you?" or "How did you come to feel that way?" And here is the most crucial part. You do not have to agree with them to offer them the dignity of being heard. You are not condoning their view. You are honoring their humanity. When you give someone the space to speak their truth without interruption or judgment, you are offering them a rare and precious gift. You are saying, "I see you. You matter." This is how we begin to mend the fractures. It doesn't start in Washington. It starts in our living rooms, in our coffee shops, in our own hearts. It starts the moment we choose to put down our own megaphone and simply listen. Now, it's easy to look at the scale of the world's problems and feel completely overwhelmed. We hear about war and poverty and political strife, and it's natural to feel paralyzed, to think that our own small actions are just a drop in an ocean of trouble. We think, what can I possibly do that would make any real difference? The answer is to shift our focus from the monumental to the immediate. You cannot solve world hunger today, but you can look the grocery clerk in the eye, see them not as a function but as a person, and thank them with genuine sincerity. You cannot end political polarization with a single act, but you can let a car merge into traffic with a patient wave instead of an impatient honk. You can't heal the divisions of the world, but you can pick up the phone and call a friend who you know is feeling lonely. Please, do not mistake these for trivial acts. They are the most important acts. Each one is a conscious vote for a kinder, more connected world. They are small acts of defiance against the narrative of fear and separation. In a world that profits from our division, every act of simple human kindness is a revolutionary act. They create ripples of grace that you cannot begin to measure. You have no idea what that person you were kind to is going through. Your small gesture might be the only moment of warmth and humanity they experience all day. This is what it means to be a vessel of peace, that beautiful phrase from our prayer. It means we allow peace to flow through us into the world in small, practical, tangible ways. We become the very change we wish to see. Finally, this work of mending and connecting cannot be done alone. Modern life, for all its wonders, can be profoundly isolating. We live in our separate homes, we drive in our separate cars, and we often interact through the cold glass of a screen. It's easy to feel like you're the only one who feels this way, the only one who yearns for a deeper, kinder way of living. That is why it is so essential to intentionally seek out and nurture connections with people who share your values of kindness, growth, and compassion. You have to find your tribe. This doesn't have to be some grand undertaking. Your tribe might be a book club where you can discuss meaningful ideas. It might be a volunteer group where you connect with others through shared service. It could be a spiritual community, a meditation group, or a church that feeds your soul. Or it could simply be a commitment to have a regular coffee with a trusted friend, someone with whom you can be completely yourself. These relationships are your true safety net. In a world of uncertainty, the strength of your community is far more valuable than the amount of money in your bank account. This is your tribe. These are the people who will celebrate with you in good times and, more importantly, hold you up in difficult times. They are the ones you can be vulnerable with, the ones you can practice deep listening with. They are the living, breathing reminder that you are not alone on this journey. Finding and nurturing this community is not a luxury. It is an essential part of living a resilient and meaningful life. Lesson 3: The courage to live the truth. So, we've explored the first lesson, the incredible power of conscious choice, which allows us to build our inner sanctuary. And we've journeyed through the second lesson, the absolute necessity of connection, which calls us to be healers in a fractured world. The third lesson is the one virtue that binds all the others together. It is the energy that transforms a good intention into a meaningful action. It is the bridge between the person we wish to be and the person we actually are, day in and day out. It is a lesson in courage. Now, when I say courage, please understand I am not talking about the dramatic, Hollywood kind of courage, where someone rushes into a burning building or saves the day in a single heroic act. That is a form of courage, to be sure, but it is not the kind that our world is asking of most of us right now. No, the courage that our era demands is a far quieter, more consistent, and in many ways, more difficult kind of courage. It is the steady courage to live in alignment with our deepest truth, even and especially when it feels inconvenient, unpopular, or completely unnoticed. This kind of courage often looks very small on the outside, but it is absolutely immense on the inside. It is the courage to choose kindness when it would be so much easier, and perhaps even more satisfying in the moment, to be cruel or sarcastic. It is the courage to speak a simple, honest truth when silence would be safer and more comfortable. It is the courage to choose patience when everything and everyone around you is pushing towards speed and instant gratification. It is the quiet, stubborn courage to keep showing up with an open and compassionate heart, day after day, even when the world feels hardened by indifference. Let's talk about what this courage looks like in practice. The courage of integrity. Edgar Cayce often spoke about the vital importance of having ideals, a set of guiding principles, like a North Star, that help us navigate our lives. But ideals remain abstract, just beautiful words, unless we have the courage to actually live them out in real time. And the word for living out our ideals is integrity. Integrity simply means alignment. It means the person you are in private is the same person you are in public. It means your words, your actions, and your deepest values are all pointing in the same direction. And living with integrity, in a world that constantly tempts us toward compromise, always requires courage. Think of the small, quiet moments where integrity is tested. It's that moment when you receive too much change at the store, and no one would ever know if you just walked away. The courage of integrity is what makes you walk back and return it. It's that moment in a group conversation when it shifts into harmful gossip about someone who isn't there. The easy path is to join in or stay silent. The courage of integrity is what allows you to gently change the subject or simply refuse to participate. It's the courage to stand up for someone who is vulnerable, even if it means drawing uncomfortable attention to yourself. These choices rarely, if ever, make headlines. They will win you no awards, but they are the very substance of a life lived with truth. They are the mortar that holds the bricks of your inner sanctuary together, making it a place of unshakable strength. The courage of persistence. Let's be honest with each other. This modern life is exhausting. The sheer pace of it, the constant pressure, the unending tide of obligations and bad news, it wears us down. It can be easy to feel cynical, to feel like giving up on these higher ideals because it all just feels like too much work. And this is where the second kind of quiet courage comes in. Persistence. Persistence is courage in motion. It is the deep strength required to rise each morning and commit, once again, to peace, to compassion, and to authenticity. Even when yesterday was messy, you didn't live up to your own standards, and today looks just as uncertain. Spiritual practice is not about achieving perfection. If we wait for perfection, we will be waiting forever. It is about continuity. It is about the willingness to keep going, the courage to begin again each and every day, to keep walking the path even when you stumble, and we all stumble, is itself a profound and quiet act of resistance against despair. It is you telling the universe and yourself, I am not giving up on becoming the person I am meant to be. The courage of vulnerability. Finally, there is a form of courage that might be the most radical and transformative of all in our modern world. It is the courage of vulnerability. For so much of our lives, we are taught to be strong by being guarded. We build walls, we put on masks, we polish our armor. We work so hard to project an image of having it all together, of knowing all the answers. Vulnerability is the courageous act of laying down that armor. It is the courage to say those three most difficult words, I don't know. It is the courage to admit when you're scared or when you've made a mistake. It is the courage to open ourselves to love, knowing full well that opening to love also makes us tender to the possibility of loss. For so long, we have mistaken vulnerability for weakness. This is a profound error. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the very soil of authentic human connection. It is the only ground in which healing and trust can actually take root. Every time you risk showing your true, imperfect self to someone, you are giving them a powerful gift. You are modeling to them that it is safe for them to do the same with you. In a world that is so often obsessed with appearances and perfection, choosing to be real is a courageous act of truth. So, how do we nurture this quiet courage in our daily lives? One simple practice is to ask yourself, in any difficult or uncertain moment, a single guiding question. What would love do here? Love, after all, is the essence of all true courage. And while the answer to that question might not always be the easiest one, it will always be the true one. Sometimes love will call on your courage to speak up and defend a principle. Sometimes love will call on your courage to stay silent and simply listen. Sometimes it will ask you to step forward and take a risk, and other times it will ask for the immense courage it takes to let go. Courage is not about always being loud and bold. It is about being faithful. Faithful to love, faithful to truth, and faithful to the higher self that you are, day by day, becoming. And here is the beautiful paradox. When you practice courage in these small, steady, daily ways, you will discover that courage is not a resource that runs out. It is a muscle that grows stronger every single time you use it. The final lesson: living with purpose. We've traveled a long way together on this path. We began with the unsettling visions of a sleeping prophet, and we journeyed through them to find not fear, but a reflection of our own world. We explored how to build a sanctuary within and how to extend that peace outward through conscious action. And so we arrive at the final and most essential lesson. It's a lesson about purpose. It's about who we are as human beings living in this very specific, very intense moment in history. So what does this era truly reveal about us? What is the truth of our human nature when put under this kind of pressure? I believe it reveals our profound duality. There is no denying the darkness. We see fear, division, and selfishness playing out on a global scale. We see people retreating into tribalism, lashing out in anger, and clinging to rigid ideologies. That is real. It is a part of the human story. But that is not the only story. Because in direct response to that darkness, we are also seeing something extraordinary. We see incredible courage rising to meet incredible challenges. We see profound compassion emerging in the face of suffering. We see ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of kindness. And perhaps most importantly, we are seeing a desperate, undeniable yearning for connection and meaning. For all the noise and distraction, millions upon millions of us are quietly asking the big questions. What is all this for? What really matters? How can I live a better life? This time is forcing us to choose. That is its great gift. It is stripping away the superficial. The things that once seemed so important, the status, the material possessions, the petty grievances, begin to feel hollow in the face of such deep uncertainty. This era is holding up a mirror to each one of us and to our society as a whole, and it is asking a single, penetrating question. Who are you, really, when everything is uncertain? And this brings us to the question of our purpose. For so long, many of us were taught that our purpose was tied to some grand, external success. To build a great company, to achieve fame, to accumulate wealth, to leave a monumental legacy. And those things are not inherently bad. But perhaps our true purpose in this specific moment of history is something quieter, yet infinitely more profound. Perhaps our purpose is to be the calm in the storm for our families. To be the one who doesn't escalate the argument, the one who listens, the one who holds a space of love and stability when everyone else is panicking. Perhaps our purpose is to be a voice of quiet reason in a sea of chaos. To be the person in the workplace or the community meeting who doesn't get swept up in the outrage, who asks thoughtful questions, who brings a measure of sanity and perspective to the conversation. Perhaps our purpose is simply to be a point of light in the darkness, however small. To be the kind neighbor, the honest business owner, the compassionate friend. To live a life of such integrity and simple goodness that we become a silent inspiration to everyone we meet. Edgar Cayce's final vision, when we look at it with our hearts instead of our fears, was not a map of our destruction. It was an invitation to our purpose. It was a call to remember who we truly are and to live that truth in the world. And so we come full circle. The great earth changes that he spoke of are real, but they are happening inside of us. The poles that are shifting are not the physical poles of our planet, but the magnetic poles of our own consciousness. It is a collective shift away from the pole of fear and toward the pole of love. It is a shift from separation to unity, from indifference to purpose. The end of 2025 is not a deadline for disaster. It is not a date with doom. It is simply another moment on our collective human journey, a powerful, potent moment that is ripe with the possibility for awakening. It is a challenge, yes, but within that challenge lies our greatest opportunity to evolve. The choice, as it has always been, and as it will always be, is ours. We have traveled a long way together on this journey of reflection, from the mysterious prophecies of a sleeping prophet to the practical challenges of our daily lives, and finally, to the deepest questions of our purpose. Thank you, truly, for lending me your time and your attention. It means more than I can say. If you have stayed with me to this point, all the way to the very end, I'd like to ask for a small favor. Please consider leaving a simple comment below that just says, "I'm still here." It would be a gift to me, letting me know that there are friends and fellow travelers who have walked this entire journey. Your presence, even from a distance, is the greatest encouragement for me to continue this work of sharing. And as a final act of engagement, I invite you to share in the comments one small, practical action you will take this week to be a vessel of peace in your own world. It doesn't have to be grand. Your simple commitment may be the very thing that inspires another person who reads it. Until we meet again, may you walk in grace, may you act with courage, and may you always, always remember the unshakable peace that resides within you. Be well.